the point is that there are certain key considerations, brothers, that inform our view of the world. As we've said, individual or collective. And to take that example, how should we view and how should we subsequently seek to address the issues facing the Muslims? The problems I mentioned at the beginning of my talk. The military, economic, political realities of the Muslim world. Some will say, well, the individual is the central unit of analysis in society. Atomism, individualism. Nothing more than individuals. That's a central unit of analysis. So let's analyze the individual, let's diagnose our individual problems, and let's address those individual prescriptions and solutions. And so they'll do that on that analysis. But that analysis is itself flawed. One, because Islam came to address more than just the individual. And two, because it has a warped understanding of society. Society is not merely a collection of individuals. It is a collection of individuals, their common sentiments, their common thoughts, and the systems that govern them. And unless there's an effort to alter those systems, at the very least simultaneous to altering our individual selves, then we will not achieve success in reforming society. And this view, in fact, is a dangerous view. And it's a view that needs to be not only criticized, but slain and buried. And never be allowed to be resurrected in the minds of the Muslims. This view of individualism and atomism. Because its implications are so grave. It accepts this existing system because it realizes that individuals cannot take on the state. It realizes, and so it only seeks selected reform. It doesn't allow us to understand power structure and power politics. It forces us to rationalize collective policies through our individual prisms. It regards individuals as the tools of implementation. And it does so because it targets individuals as the central unit of analysis. But this is not how Islam came to address. As we said, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was rahmatun lil alameen. It was a rahmah not to individuals but to mankind. And so as an ummah, we need to adopt social, economic, political, ideological frameworks which are inherently collective in nature. Yeah, so we need to, in brief, we need to reject individualism altogether. Just as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Mecca, he sought to challenge those prevalent conceptions. Yeah, so he would go on top of Mount Safa and he would warn the Quraysh. He would criticize the Quraysh for their fraudulent economic practices. He would criticize their social practices of female infanticide. Yes, so these ayat will be revealed. وَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ. And Rasulullah would take this and deliver it to the Quraysh. He would not deliver it to certain individuals. He would not target Abu Jahl or Abu Lahab in their capacity as individuals, but in their capacity as of leaders of tribes who have influence over that society. And so he understood the difference between individualism and collectivism. And he understood the difference in how our work, our activism should be defined collectively, not individually. And so too should we, in our time, seek to target individuals as part of society. Just like Rasulullah ﷺ stood up on top of the mountain and warned the public as a whole, so too should we seek to challenge public opinion, not just individual opinion. And with this we understand that certain individuals represent a system, not just themselves. What more do we understand? We understand that no individual or no group of individuals is bigger than the system. We understand that the importance of power structures, of power politics. We can appreciate and undertake more relevant and more accurate political analysis. We can appreciate that the systems exist to protect the ideology. And unless you target the system, the society, the prevalent concepts in society, you will not achieve change on a mass level. And yet it all starts, I appreciate it all starts as a simple organic idea in our minds, that our work lies in seeking to manifest this reality. And so to conclude, inshallah, I'd say that this disease, again, this disease of individualism needs to be fought, it needs to be slain, and it needs to be buried, never to be resurrected again. And that we as an ummah need to view our reality, we need to diagnose our problems, we need to prescribe our solutions, and define our aspirations, and we need to realign our priorities as an ummah, not as individuals. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فإنه هو الغفور الرحيم.
جزاك الله خير Brother Sufyan. How are we doing for time for Salat al-Maghrib?
Last question. What do you say to people that answer the question, like what's your opinion on when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara." Like what's like that basic, like behind that meaning? What's the reason?
Say your people and yourself and your people are in the fire.
Yourself and your family.
Save yourself and your families from the fire. Yeah, look, again, let's view this in its correct context. Yeah, so not just, that's a very, very broad way of saying what we already know. Yeah, in the Quran it says that many times, that you protect yourself from fire, protect yourself from the wrath of Allah. But we need to appreciate, bro, what this means. Yeah, so as we've said, no greater objective in life, and nothing would save us from Allah's wrath except that we have His pleasure. Yeah, and what does that mean? Adherence to His commands, refraining from the prohibitions that He's laid down. And so when we protect our families and protect ourselves from the fire, what greater way is there to do that than to ensure that Islam is dominant in this world? Yeah, because there's obligations, as we've said. So we say, saving ourselves, just follow that logical progression. Saving ourselves from Allah's wrath, from the fire, from the evil of hellfire, from falling into the traps of shaitan, comes about by achieving Allah's pleasure, by adhering to His commands. He has commands which are individual in nature, and He has commands which are collective in nature. And both of these need to be observed. As we've said, there is this observation, and there's this obligation, and there's that obligation. And so only by fulfilling Islam's commands in their entirety will we achieve that. And will we save ourselves, will we save our families. Right? Now, obviously there is an added incentive, or there's an added reality that we, as individuals, we have an immediate obligation, and that is upon ourselves and our families. But that is not to the exclusion. There's no chance, and again, look at the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if you see his reality in Mecca, it didn't take very long before the revelation in the cave of Hira for him to take that message to society. That if we go through the narration, as Ibn Ishaq mentions it in his seerah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he received the revelation in the cave, and it caused him to tremble and shiver. And so he's going down back to his house, and he goes to his wife, and he says, "Dathiruni, dathiruni." Cover me, cover me. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals the verse, "Ya ayyuhal muddathir, qum fa'anzir." Arise and warn the people. وَرَبَّكَ فَكَبِّرْ وَثِيَابَكَ فَطَهِرْ, and the rest of it. But even if you look at the next verse that I just missed out, وَالرُّجْزَ فَهْجُرْ. And it's talking about society. Is it because his wife wasn't an idol worshipper? Right? He wasn't an idol worshipper. Abu Bakr wasn't an idol worshipper. This was society that was being addressed. And so, again, there's an element of individual obligation, but immediately there's also an element of collective work as well.
Okay, brothers, inshallah, we'll get started again. To get things started, we're going to go to Brother Hamza, who's going to introduce the news, a very short news wrap, inshallah, for the past fortnight, both local and global news. Brother Hamza.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to Ummah News, as presented by Nahda on the 18th of December 2010. Unfortunately, we're having technical issues, so my slides aren't going to be up, but nonetheless, we'll do what we can. The first news item that I want to explore is the Al-Qaeda threat. What we hear about on the news quite a lot, where there's always this shadowy, fancy organization called Al-Qaeda that's supposedly behind everything that's wrong with the world, right? The head of Australia's Intelligence Analysis Agency, which is the Office of National Assessments, He told US diplomats in October of 2008, so 2 years ago, that Al-Qaeda has ultimately failed to achieve the strategic leadership it sought within the Islamic world. So we have diplomats telling the US that Al-Qaeda is not a threat. It's not as it's perceived to be. However, Al-Qaeda is still the primary, Al-Qaeda and the Taliban are the primary reasons why the Australian government is still involved in the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Julia Gillard has cited Al-Qaeda as being the threat that needs to be stopped in the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. They constantly say, the politicians constantly say that if we don't stop Al-Qaeda, Afghanistan and Iraq will return to being terrorist training grounds. Now the evidence suggests, according to this report, that the threat isn't there. And so what needs to be questioned then is what is the real purpose behind these occupations? If the threat of Al-Qaeda is not there and is not real, then really what is the real agenda behind the occupations within the Muslim world? If we observe the greater context, it's quite clear that there is a greater objective than just Al-Qaeda on the cards. There's a greater objective against the entire Muslim world by the governments of the Western world. We'll move on to our second news story, which is a very recent Christmas Island tragedy. You may have heard on the news recently that 30 asylum seekers are so far confirmed dead from the shipwreck close to Christmas Island of a boat which occurred on Wednesday morning. Men, women and children are amongst the dead. And once again, both sides of Australian politics are playing this event up, and they're both seeking to give their points of view. But one point of view which has been sorely missing so far in this discussion is the question of why exactly are the asylum seekers coming in such large numbers? Again, it's because of Western foreign policy. It is the interference of Western governments within Muslim lands that is causing the native populations of those lands to flee their borders and to travel halfway around the world in haphazard boats with real risks of death and with real risks of sinking and accidents such as these. It is because of Western foreign policy that they are forced to leave their lands. It is because of the state of places like Afghanistan and Iraq. And if you assess the background of the asylum seekers, you see very clearly that most all of them are from places where there is occupation and there is invasion. And so the question needs to be asked, why is it that they are asylum seekers in the first place? And the answer is, it is because of the interference that is occurring within their lands that they seek new homes and they cross the world in shoddy boats. Moving on to what has been the big news of the past 2 weeks, WikiLeaks. Everyone's heard about WikiLeaks, everyone's heard about Julian Assange, everyone's heard about his imprisonment and subsequent release on bail. And we won't discuss the personality, but we'll discuss what the personality revealed, which was the cables themselves. And effectively what the cables did was reveal what most of the Muslims already knew. The fact that Muslim governments, Muslim leaders, the leaders within the Islamic world are nothing more than puppets and lapdogs to greater powers which occupy the houses of London and Washington. They are nothing more than puppets on strings, and they dance to the tune of imperial masters across other borders. They don't have the interests of the Muslims at heart. In fact, the Saudi authorities have been reported as saying to Americans that we have spilt blood together. Muslim blood. The Muslim leaders are saying to America, we have spilt Muslim blood with you. These are the caliber of our leaders. And this is what these cables have come to show. And the last news piece for today is another one that exposes the nature of the Muslim world, really. It's about Christmas. Okay, why the Muslim world and Christmas? It's because Abu Dhabi has erected the world's largest Christmas tree. A Muslim country has put up the world's largest Christmas tree. The tree itself cost over $10,000. The tree itself cost over 10,000. The adornments on the tree made it cost over $11 million. $11 million. They had 181 jewels and diamonds on that tree. Now this is a